Hey everybody, welcome back. I've got another episode that's got a single primary topic with the corresponding tips that apply. Let's get into round 29 of the tactical transition tips. This time, the topic is risk management. For the close range group, those of you who are looking at your transition right away to say maybe a year from now, learn corporate risk management principles. And for the medium range group, those of you who are looking at transition in, say, 5 years, develop a personal risk management strategy. And for the long range group, those of you who've got at least 10 years, you're just starting your career, start using risk management principles in your job today.
You transition out is try to model all of the good things, the discipline, the structure, that little bit of rigidity into your everyday life. And I think that that's a great way to make that transition happen, man.
Take the time to invest in yourself because it means everything. You know, that's what the difference is. The difference is not just to collect a check. It's to live 25 years, 30, 40 years after you retire and pay it forward that way.
A close range group. Learning risk management. Learning corporate risk management. We hear it a lot, but what is it actually? Well, essentially, it's the process of identifying and assessing those factors that can control or impact a company. And it's given the broad term of threats. You're not just thinking of threat in the sense of danger, physical danger, employees being harmed, that type stuff. Granted, that's a huge component of risk assessment. And obviously, if you were having this conversation 30 years ago, the proclivity of mass violence was much less. So that has increased as a component of risk management. But risk management also includes financial uncertainty. What is the state of the economic picture and how is that going to have an impact on a given company? Is it reliant on the economy? Obviously, anytime there's a drastic change, more for the negative than the positive, in the economy, it can have a ripple effect across all companies. But that's something that a company always has to be looking at. There's legal liabilities. You've got the outside influences. So if the company provides a service, what are the legal liabilities for that service to the people that interact with that service? What are the legal liabilities of an employee doing something foolish, inappropriate, a boss doing something unprofessional, inappropriate with another employee? All those things that can expose a company to legal liabilities, whether it be civil, whether it be criminal. So something to be thinking about is it's a very broad topic of risk management. Don't even overlook the idea of just simple stuff, accidents. An employee driving a company vehicle and getting involved in an accident, whether it's their fault or not, there's going to be liability on the company. And so you're looking at this from how can each of these actions, whatever it is, every action has reactions to it. And learning how a company can address potential threats is risk management. This is not something that is only important to big companies or high-risk companies. Matter of fact, if you look at it to the opposite extreme, the smaller companies or the companies that might perceive them as not risk averse, they provide a very basic service. Maybe they've got a very limited number of employees. Those are almost the more potentially threatening. And what I mean by that is a lot of times small companies have one person who's kind of wearing a bunch of different hats. Maybe they're the project manager, maybe they're the HR person, and they're not really well trained or well skilled in all of those areas. So they're not looking at all of the potential threats that can come to the company. The other thing you kind of get is maybe an owner that doesn't really see how things change, doesn't see that they need to protect their employees as well as kind of protecting the company. They kind of have that, I'll use the term, the good old boy mentality of, oh, it's going to be fine. This is how we've always done it. But the thing is that where a bigger company might be able to recover from a small incident, a small company might not be able to recover from a minuscule incident. You get a huge lawsuit and all of a sudden that could bankrupt a small company. So learning these basic principles, regardless where you're going to end up going, you can bring that knowledge to the table and start looking at the company's big picture and really start breaking it down into all the small subsets of everything they do. Granted, the easy thing that we might be able to step into is the overall site security and security of personnel, but there's so many other areas that need to be examined. A very practical example of this is a supply chain company. They have so many pieces to their puzzle to make their job work. They have to deal with suppliers. First issue is a given supplier always going to be able to provide them with services or product that they need. A practical example of this is during COVID. Look at how many companies could not operate simply because they could not get the supplies they needed from a given supplier, whether it be outside the country, however it works, they were not able to get at the front end the basic stuff they needed to keep their business moving forward. The next thing you might want to be thinking about from a supply chain aspect is inventory and managing inventory, making sure that the company doesn't get too low on a given item because of historical sales. Hey, we've got a spike in September each year of this item. Let's make sure that we're bringing more in or we're making more or whatever it is. But you're looking at the long term as opposed to just simply going, oh, there's 4 or 5 of them back there. We're good to go. All of a sudden you get a run and you get an order of 10 or 15 or 1,000 or whatever it is. You're not able to fulfill those orders. It's not a supplier issue. It's your company hasn't created enough inventory to be able to then provide their suppliers or their customers. And then you just have business relationships. If you're relying on always being called by a given customer to provide them with X, whatever X is, if that's your business model and you're relying on that, or the company is relying on that, and they're not diversifying their customer base, if that one customer stops placing orders, what's the overall impact on the company? It's kind of like going back to the idea, if you've heard about investing, don't invest all your money in one particular stock, because if that one stock fails, your portfolio fails. You want to diversify yourself. So being able to come into a company and explain risk management, explain that you understand the concepts of it, makes you more marketable. Some of the things that you want to think about maybe getting in your tool belt, if you've got the time, you can get the CRMP, which is the Certified Risk Management Professional Certificate. There's also the PMP, which is the Project Management Professional. And the thing with that is a component of that certificate program is talking about risk management. So some good certificates to possibly come to the table with if you're looking at not necessarily it being a requirement for a job that you want to get, but definitely something that can bolster your marketability and your sales or your ability to sell yourself to that company to be hired. You're showing going back to the most basic part is the hiring process. You're showing that you have a skill set and a knowledge that is beneficial to their company. The other thing you can do, though, is emphasize that your goal is to minimize the risk to this company. Even if you're coming in at an entry-level job, you can work into your answers the knowledge that you have about risk management and how decisions that you make can impact the company, but that you also look at the practices of the company and try to be an advisor to your higher ups on potential risk threats that the company may be experiencing. Ultimately, though, what you want to sell it as is you are always looking out for the company. And if you see something that is a potential risk, you not just identify it, move on, or worse, identify it and don't even say anything about it. You'll identify it to those in your chain of command and also offer contingencies to address that threat.
This episode is brought to you by Trident Coffee, the veteran-owned brand where every sip inspires you to live life full steam ahead. I've been drinking their coffees for a while now, and I'm glad to partner with a company whose products I use. At Trident, they're more than just coffee. They're storytellers. Crafted by veterans, their instant cold brew is perfect for those who serve, those who have served, and anyone who values wellness. Featuring natural ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics, it's more than just a morning pick-me-up. It's your new wellness ritual. Enjoy it at home or on the go, wherever your day takes you. Trident Coffee isn't just about great-tasting coffee. It's about empowering you to be the healthiest version of yourself, because great veterans make great citizens. Try their instant cold brew today, along with many other coffee products, and taste the freedom of wellness. Remember, when you choose Trident, you're not just choosing coffee. You're choosing a path of connection through health and wellness. Head on over to tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. Again, that's TDP15 for 15% off your order.
Medium range group. Adopt a personal risk management plan. You need to be thinking about everything that surrounds you. Your transition's coming. Your career it's set in place. But what you need to be thinking about is what are those things in your life that could impact your transition? Some of the immediate things to think about are your health, your family, the availability of the jobs that you want to get, the potential for movement. All of these little things are going to impact your personal life. You need to do an honest evaluation. Rank those risks. So, for instance, where are your children going to be at your transition? How does school or their sports or their activities or whatever they're involved in impact your transition? How does your spouse's work, their involvement, your extended family, all these things, list them out. Rank those potential, and I loosely call them threats or risks, low to high. Then what you need to do is, based on how high of a risk it is, now you need to build in contingencies for it. So for instance, let's say you're dealing with a back injury right now. Maybe it's just kind of nagging, but you haven't really addressed it. If it's work related, when you make your transition out, are you going to be covered to address that medical problem? So maybe what you need to do is move forward with getting the injury addressed now. If it's going to require surgery and recuperation that may take you longer to actually make your transition, is that the best long-term option for you because you're still under the umbrella of your current organization while you have immediate access to care? The other thing, you have a career or a job you want to get to. Today, there might be an abundance of those types of jobs. they may or may not be there in 5 years, in 2 years, in 6 months, whatever it is. So the other thing you need to be doing is reassessing what you're going to do when you transition. See if it's something that's still going to be there. Are jobs that you might be interested in going to continue to grow? And how do you need to keep growing to keep yourself viable for those? Or is something that you're interested in today maybe not going to be there 5 years from now? So how do you need to pivot and find that new job to move to? With that, the other thing you need to think about is what's the average hiring time for the given company you want to work for? And you can find that out. You can reach out, make contact with people. What if they tell you, yeah, from interview to actually starting is normally an 8-month process. Company moves rather slowly. Do you have the financial means to carry you over that 8 months? Or are you thinking, hey, I'm going to retire on Friday, I'll have a job on Monday, and I'll be good to go? If you don't have the money to carry you over, what's the stress and the impact on your family while you wait or look for that next job? So all those little things that are on you personally, you need to evaluate them, identify those risks, and identify the contingencies for them. Obviously, the higher the risk, the more important it is to address those contingencies, because the lower the risk, and it goes in two parts. It goes the likelihood of the risk, or how high the risk is. So for instance, let's use the example of not being able to find a job. That could be a very high risk scenario when you actually come to your transition. On top of that, it can have high negative impact, because if you've got to go 6 or 8 months and you don't have the financial means to carry your family over, then it's going to have a huge impact on you. Whereas a low risk, today, your son or your daughter might be playing soccer and they're getting involved with a travel club, and you're saying, okay, they may or may not want to keep playing when I retire. Well, in 5 years from now, they may have completely walked away from it. Now they're playing the trumpet, and all the things that you set in place thinking that they might continue with that might be a moot point. So it's the low risk, low frequency of occurrence kind of deal. But when you rate those risks that are in your life, make sure you address contingencies for them and reevaluate them as you close in on your retirement or your transition away. By doing that, the most important thing is you're reducing the uncertainty when you come to your transition. That planning ahead and being better prepared for the what ifs is going to save you a lot of stress. It's going to save you a lot of heartache. It may not necessarily change what's going to happen, but at least you'll be better prepared for it if it does happen. So you're constantly thinking about, okay, here's where I want to get to, but if this happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to pivot here. And so you don't have to think about the pivot when it happens. You just move and move on to the next contingency plan. It may be something where as you're approaching your transition and you're just about to drop your papers and say, all right, I'm walking away, there's literally no jobs available. Maybe you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to hold off for 6 months, see if something picks up. I'm giving a very low level example, but by have already thought through this process, you'll be better prepared when you actually get there. I mentioned injuries. You might get to the end of your ride and an injury pops up at that moment. And that would even be a bigger reason to say, you know what? I am definitely not transitioning out now until I get rid of this or until I deal with this. Don't put this off. It's easy to think, oh, I've got a few years, I don't need to worry about it. Things change on the daily. And one of the things that you need to make sure that you're prepared for are those pivots. Because even though your plan might be 5 years down the road, what if there's something that presents itself sooner than that? And are you ready to address it? Maybe a promotional opportunity comes available that you weren't expecting right now. You think, you know what, I'm just going to ride the next 5 years out. The guy ahead of me or the woman ahead of me is not looking to leave, so I don't need to be preparing for that next step up. But a year from now, 2 years from now, all of a sudden that person decides, you know what, I'm popping chocks. I'm going to get out of here early. And now a new position's opened. Are you prepared to pivot into that? And then what does that do to the overall length of your career? Is it going to add 4 or 5 more years onto that point? So constantly keep reassessing those threats, those risks, those things in your life that could potentially affect your transition down the road.
This episode is brought to you by Soflete, a tactical fitness company founded by special operations soldiers. Soflete is dedicated to helping you achieve a healthy lifestyle. From expertly crafted training programs to high-quality proteins, pre-workouts, and sleep and recovery supplements, they've got everything you need to power through your day. Soflete also has a full line of clothing. They have you covered from shorts to cold weather gear. Embracing the motto, Die Living, Soflete inspires us all to embrace life with vigor and resilience. So take the first step towards a healthier you. Visit soflete.com. That's SOFLETE.com. And use the promo code TDP20 to get 20% off your order. Again, that's TDP20 for 20% off your order.
Long Range Group. Start using risk management today. You don't need to be in a leadership position to utilize risk management. It's not somebody else's job to be thinking about risk. It's all of our jobs to think about how the task we need to complete, what are the impacts of us being directly involved in it? Because how I would handle something is going to be different than you would handle something as opposed to how your coworker would handle it. It's that personal involvement. It's our involvement in that scenario, in that situation, in that task, whatever you want to refer to it as, that's going to have risk potentials. Are you going to try to cut a corner? Are you going to overlook something that somebody else would have seen? How many times have you come into a situation and somebody's struggling to work it out and it's very obvious, hey, just do X, Y, or Z, and like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. We do it all the time because what happens is we kind of get a little bit robotic and we get used to things being the same every day. And then when something kind of has, I'm going to go left instead of going right, it kind of freezes us up because we aren't thinking about what happens if that left comes. I'm always used to going right. What happens if I need to go left? Start implementing risk management today. Look at everything that you do. It doesn't have to be big operations. Something as simple as driving down the street. What is the impact to you if you're not paying attention, if you're focused on your phone or whatever it is, all those little things, you can start implementing risk management practices into your daily. If you're in a supervisory position, start thinking about when you direct your team to do a task, how are they interpreting what you're saying? And are you giving clear enough directions to limit potential risk? Because one of the things that will happen is if their actions go south, you can best believe that your organization is going to come back to you and look at the direction that you provided to them. So make sure you're explaining yourself well. If it's in writing, make sure you're clearly putting or getting all the information that's needed in there. Does it mean maybe you run your decision-making process by somebody else? Say, hey, what do you think about this? It's all those little things that we think are tedious or that we think, nothing's going to go wrong. They know what I'm thinking in my head. They're going to get to where I want them to get to. And you're just assuming that they are. It's not how it works. Unfortunately, when people get involved, you got to figure they're going to take the path of the laziest way. And I hate to say that. You would assume that all of your subordinates are going to work the most efficiently and effectively, but sometimes they act in the most laziest or the path of water. Water takes the path of least resistance. So be mindful of that. Is in your leadership decisions, what freedoms are you giving your people to make mistakes? And it's not that you want to micromanage them. It's that you want to give them clear direction to get to accomplish the task with the least amount of risk. And maybe it does take a little bit more observation by you to just not micromanage, not get in there and do it for them, but not let them get too far off the path if they start making decisions that aren't the most optimal. Ultimately, by starting to adopt these little principles now at work, again, even if you're not in a leadership position, you become valuable to your organization. Maybe you're that good middle manager guy and you're pointing out stuff to your boss. Hey, I see that we need to do this. Here's some possible risks. Hopefully, you've got a good boss who's not threatened by you, and they take what you're saying like, oh, thanks, I appreciate that. I wasn't thinking that way. And that goes back to off topic, just working on your relationship building skills. But also, if you just become that guy who's always there to help, always, maybe not the most fun thing to do, maybe be the voice of reason. You're in your team and they want to go, hey, let's go, whatever it is. Hey, let's pause for a second. Let's think about what might happen if we do this. It's a hard position to put yourself in because especially if you start coming across as, the thorn, under the saddle that's constantly what they perceive as causing problems or not being the fun guy, but you want to explain to them that it's 2024, we're soon going to be in 2025, and making poor decisions, making bad decisions aren't just going to be able to be swept under the rug. They're going to have huge ripple effects. And at the end of the day, you always want to be thinking about protecting yourself, using good risk management skills now, regardless of the level that you're at within your organization. Implementing risk management protects you because that's the most important thing. You need to go home to your family every day. You need to pay that mortgage each month. You need to put food on the table. So you need to protect you and make sure you have a job tomorrow. But by implementing these practices and using this even on the smallest level, you start secondarily making your organization better because you, and it always comes back to you aren't putting your organization in a risk potential. So protect yourself first, ultimately protects your organization. When you've got downtime, run through scenarios in your head. Hey, what if X and I did this or I didn't do this? What would be the potential risk? Run through those scenarios constantly. What ifs, so that when it does happen, you don't have to. I'm never saying don't think. There are some situations where we do need to react with these jobs that we have. But for the most part, we've got time going to an operation. We've got time going to a call to think about, okay, what are the circumstances that I'm heading into? What could be the potential events that I'm going to encounter by doing this task, whatever it is, and what could be the impacts of my decisions on those. Constantly keep working through that loop. You're going to make yourself better. You're going to protect yourself, and you're ultimately going to be protecting your organization. Stay current with new information, new trends, anything out there that's changing with risk management. Some of the things that you can do is there's a website, risk.net. It's news and analysis on risk management. As always, I don't have any affiliation with any company or book or anything that I refer to. I'm simply just pulling what's the most common information. So risk.net is a good website. There's the other, it's PRMIA, the Professional Risk Managers International Association. If you want to join it, maybe you're in a position where having more risk management knowledge will better prepare you for moving up in your organization, or maybe you're in a position now where you're being tasked with being more aware of the risk threats to your organization. Join this organization, the PRMIA, to get more knowledge, more skills, more networking capabilities with other people who might be operating in the same space, who can give you their knowledge on something that they've already dealt with. And wrapping this up, close range group. You need to learn corporate risk management. You're heading into your transition. Be able to make you more marketable to your next company that you're going to work for. You're going to do that by understanding the threats and risks to that company and maybe offering contingencies to help mitigate those. Medium range group. Adopt a personal risk management plan today. As you're heading toward your transition these next few years, look at the potential risks on the personal side of your life. You can look at the career side also, but look at the personal side and make sure you're developing strategies to address those risks. And for the long range group, start using risk management tools today. Think before you act. 99.9% of the time, we probably have time to think before we act. Start thinking about what are the potential threats and risks that you expose to yourself and ultimately to your organization by making the decisions you're going to make. Thanks for taking the time to listen or watch. I hope you found this informative. Please share the podcast. Please like and follow it. Increasing those numbers helps put it in front of more people's eyes, which ultimately helps me grow the podcast. Let me know, as always, what you want me to cover or what you want to hear, or if I'm not covering something well enough, then, I'll try to address it more in future episodes. Other than that, I'll catch you on the next one.